It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
Hey guys, how is it going? And welcome to the Morning Star Drive on 117.8. It is Wednesday, August 28th, and so happy for you joining us. We are ready to start another day together with the Lord. So subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on SoundCloud, and make sure to support us on Patreon. So today we have an exciting podcast for you. We have Health is Happiness, the Evangelism Scripts Word Study, and of course commentaries, updates, and news on what is happening around the world in this history today. All right, everyone, how are you doing? And yes, it is the middle of the week already. It is Wednesday. Hope you guys are enjoying your week thus far, and I hope you guys will enjoy tonight's Wednesday service too. Don't forget that we have Q&A Thursday every single week, so get those questions ready. Send them to me whenever you can, and if you haven't yet, leave a like and comment to build our community. I am just so happy for everyone joining us every weekday on the Morning Star Drive, so let's get up and support each other each and every day. This week's Sunday message title is Do the Mission to the End with Joy and Excitement. All right, guys, it is already the middle of the week. I am super duper exhausted. I am, guys. I am tired. I just, for those of you guys who don't know, the trial, today's for me, it's still the Tuesday, and I'm recording this, but the trial just finished, and I was once again on duty, just sitting in the car and making sure that the peace is kept and nothing, no funny shenanigans happens or stuff like that too. So today wasn't as bad as Thursday. Thursday was like 12 hours. Today, it was like, I was there from like 7 to 12:40, almost 1 p.m., 1 p.m. So it was like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1. So about 6 hours today. So it wasn't as hard. It was a very, very short trial today. And those of you guys who haven't heard yet, there's going to be one more trial happening on September 6th. And I'm not going to say that that's a special day. It's a special day because it's the last day of the trial, not because it's my birthday. And I think my birthday, either way, will get drowned out by the trial anyways. So I just got to say it beforehand because it's not the whole day is going to be based on the trial. So I'm not going to be like holding my breath and stuff like that too. Have you guys checked out the new coffee section in my office? I did post it on my Instagram. I have a brand new coffee section I just made in my office. Very, very thankful. A bunch of friends delivered some nice coffee for me. So, I got a hand grinder. Actually, the hand grinder and like the equipment, like some of the stuff that I could just take around with me, that was a gift from a good friend in Taiwan. And then on top of that, another friend from Taiwan brought some nice coffee from World Championship Roasters. So I got nice drip bags there. And I also, a friend over here gave me some whole beans, coffee beans from New York, which is kind of cool too. So I'm quite excited. I don't know. And, the thing that's kind of interesting is it's quite exciting to build this coffee corner or this coffee section in my office. And now I'm going to Daiso, and I'm adding more and more things. I'm buying cups. I'm buying like things to pour the water out for like a drip bag or a pour over. And I'm slowly making it nicer and nicer. I'm buying these like little baskets where I can put the drip bags in and stuff like that too. And it's interesting because it reminds me of this week's message. It actually does. Because it's about, if you don't like something, you can't do it very long. Which means that if you do like something, if you have joy and excitement, you could do it for a long time. And you're not going to feel the suffering if you like it. Kind of like how Sunsim was building Wolmyeongdong. He had so much joy and excitement that all the suffering that came from it, he didn't really feel it. And he was up in the mountains suffering away, but it was for the sake of it, right? Wolmyeongdong was made suffering without any sleep and just tons. It was just night after night going into the pre-dawn. Working on the ambition masterpiece in Wolmyeongdong, and Sunsim said that you don't really feel the suffering because you feel the joy and excitement. And for me, coffee is one of my hobbies, And I always get excited when I get something for coffee. So it's really interesting. I get my dopamine hit there. I'm like, ooh, I'm going to get a new basket. Ooh, I'm going to get new mugs I could drink coffee out of. And it's interesting because it's for me building my coffee corner. I don't mind driving into the city to get new equipment or getting new things for coffee, buying baskets to organize the things or new equipment to make my experience better. I feel like this is what Sunsteam talked about in the past is having the ownership, becoming owners of this history. And I'm kind of just feeling it through this miniaturization of this coffee corner that I'm having, because ownership is an interesting concept because I don't really own it anyways, right? But Sunsteam talks about becoming owners of this history, but in order to become an owner, you need to truly feel that it belongs to you. Like it has to belong, you have to have that feeling. And it's interesting because when you feel like something is yours, when you finally become an owner of something, you actually invest into it. You start putting money into it. You don't think about how much money you're wasting. You just want to put more money into it. You think about the better experience. You put more investment of time and energy, and it's something you really, really want to do. So, when I think about some people, when they're really into cars, so guys are really into this type of thing, and they spend so much money tuning up their cars, better exhaust, better engine, better this, better that, better, like everything to make their driving experience better. And it's crazy because they start off with the super cheap car, and then they put thousands of dollars into making that super cheap car a little bit faster and a little bit nicer. And they don't realize that in the end, with all the money that they've poured into it, they could actually just get a better car. Do you know what I mean? But that's kind of like this, that's the ownership aspect. When you become an owner, you will invest money, invest your time, invest your energy to make it better and better. And the more you invest, the more you feel it's yours. And I think that's something that we have to think about too, is when it comes to us in Providence, what's going to make like Providence truly feel like it's ours? And the answer is, it depends how much you invest. Because the more you invest, the more you'll feel it's yours, because you put your time and effort into it. It's almost like you're buying it for yourself, right? And when you become an owner of it, you don't think about the suffering. You don't think about the cost of it, right? And I think that's one of the really super important things that we need to think about when it comes to making history happen in our life too. It's kind of like Paul. Paul was not one of the 12 apostles. Paul just became an owner of this history by listening to the gospel, realizing who Jesus was, and then he started traveling the world and preaching the gospel and evangelizing thousands and thousands of people. It wasn't a job for him. He just wanted to, Jesus didn't sit there and say, I hire you as my evangelist. No, he was inspired. It's something he wanted to do. And he wants to do it so badly, he's willing to travel on foot. Give me a second here, right? Let me just check on Apostle Paul. How many kilometers did he travel? Okay. How far did Apostle Paul travel on his missionary journeys, right? And guess what it says? Paul embarked on 4 missionary journeys. Remember, it was never a job given to him. And in 14 years, can you guys guess right now? In 14 years, just kind of like, I'm going to tell you the answer in about 5 seconds, but guess in your head right now. In 14 years, how many kilometers did he travel? The answer is 14,725 kilometers, which is over 1,000 kilometers per year, right? That's how much he traveled. He's traveling 14. And remember, guys, this is not like us when we're traveling by bike or by a car. We're talking on foot. He traveled that long to preach the gospel. Can you imagine how crazy that is, or how much of an owner he became? Because he invested his entire life into it, it became his. So the question I bring to you guys is the same thing, is, are you going to make yourself the owner? That's an interesting question. Will you make yourself the owner, which means will you put in the time and effort? Which is the same as someone putting in money to buy something. Instead of putting in money, what are you doing? You're actually putting in time and effort for something to become yours. And I think that's something that we have to realize and recognize too, is, yeah, this is something that, since you've told us many times, become the owners of this history. And becoming the owners is not just, listening to the Bible study and going to church. It's about how much time and effort you put into it. And that's going to make the biggest difference, right? We must become owners of this history. So, that was something very interesting. Just seeing myself. I'm in my office recording this right now too. I think you probably can hear a little bit of echo in the background anyways, but I'm looking at the coffee corner. It was just an empty shelf, this empty cupboard that has like 4 shelves. I took 2 of them for my coffee corner, but kind of that's kind of the reality. Like, this is the reality of becoming an owner. So, it is something that I hope that all of us can become, not just for our hobbies, not just for our houses and our work, but more importantly, for this history. Oh, here's something that's interesting. Remember I told you guys on Monday that I had a conversation with the professors about the professors that came from like Taiwan, Hong Kong, and China, and they're doing a conference over here in Guangdong, right? I talked to someone, and they were telling me that the person that I was talking to was this professor who's a professor in Japan. He's from Hong Kong. He speaks English really well. But guess what? What his paper was on. This is kind of crazy. Okay? Try to guess. This professor is a professor that studies religion. What was his paper? What was his studying? What did he study? Sorry, just a quick sip of my coffee right now. He wrote a paper, okay? And it's about religions around the world and how they spread to other countries. And I think his paper was about, the gospel came to Korea via England. But now, like, South Korea is one of they send out the most missionaries in all the world. And here they are spreading the gospel. But the thing that he wrote in his paper about is about when you evangelize, are you like a religion? Are you also evangelizing your culture? Now, what does that mean? And it's interesting because he says this professor wrote about when religion comes into a country from another country, what is the line between the religious culture or the country's culture? And this is so interesting because how many of us have talked about this before in foreign countries when we're always asking, what is heaven's culture and what is Korean culture? Like, we always discuss, like, is it okay to do this? Is it okay to do this? Right? Is this a Korean thing or is this like the heavens thing? And Sunsteam talked about in the past that, of course, there are some things that are overlapping with heaven's culture and Korean culture, right? But it was so shocking to me that this was an actual academic topic. It's not just something that's in our hearts and minds, but it's a real academic topic. And when I heard that this professor wrote it, I can't wait to meet this professor again because I'd want to talk to him about it. And I know a lot of times foreign countries we sometimes write letters to Sunsteam asking, hey, Sunsteam, what is Providence culture and what is Korean culture? I would say that is too general and vague of a question to ask. And we really need to do our responsibility, right? And I think there are some things that are absolute. We're not going to get around it. right? We're not going to get around certain things like pre-dawn prayer. Like that seems like it's Korean culture because even the Christian churches all do pre-dawn prayer, right? So we could think to ourselves as like, oh, maybe it's a Korean thing. But we know that absolutely that is not something you split between Korean culture and heaven's culture, right? We all know that the pre-dawn is a big thing. But here's an interesting thing. I got a question from a head leader the other day, and they're talking about, when you have a church, like some people may ask, do we need to take our shoes off? And it's a real question. So here's the thing. Is that heaven's culture or is that Korean culture? And I would say that is probably not even Korean culture because, yes, in a home you take off your shoes, and some restaurants will make you take off your shoe in some places, but overall, when you go to Korea, your shoes are on everywhere, even in churches, even in Providence churches. It doesn't matter what city you're in. There are so few churches that you take off your shoes. And of course, one of the churches in Korea, like one style of church that you would definitely take your shoes off, is if it's a house church, right? Because it goes by the rules of the house. And most houses in Korea, you have to take off your shoes, right? I think there's probably so few churches you have to take your shoes off in Providence in Korea. So few that I couldn't even name you one except Wonmyeongdong. But some seem like we treat Wonmyeongdong different than all the other churches, right? If it was Providence or heaven's culture to take your shoes off inside the church, then every single church in Providence in Korea would all be taking off their shoes, but they're not, right? They can clearly separate between Wonmyeongdong and all other churches, right? So when we look at this, we're like, yeah, that's more of a cultural thing. It's not so much heaven's culture where every country around the world you have to take off your shoes to go to church service. And that's, we can say that's an easy one to look at. Like, yeah, guess what? It's not really, that's something we can split between heaven's culture and Korean culture. And, there's other things that we can look at too. For instance, what would be a Korean culture is bowing when you greet someone. And that's purely cultural. It's all the same feeling and meaning, whether you shake hands, whether you high five, whether you bow. It's all something where you're greeting, right? So that's, we can obviously, change that and look at that and say that's more of Korean culture than heaven's culture. I would even say when someone gives you something, to receive it with two hands is a Korean culture thing. Right? That's definitely Korean. Like in the Western countries, it's not like you have to take it with two hands and then bow and this and that. These are all different depending on the culture, right? So it's very interesting that if we started to take things into detail, we would actually really be able to separate things out, right? It would become a lot easier. What about this? What about this? What about this? Right? And I would say that if we were really wanting to figure out between the difference of heaven's culture and Korean culture, I would say we'd have to go to that extent, go into detail one by one, and try to figure out like those bigger questions and say, hey, Sunseem, what about this? Of course, I'm not going to say, hey, Sunseem, right? But what's the difference? What's the difference between this and this? And I would say that it's not just about the research that we put in. It's also about doing our full responsibility. What does that mean? I would say don't just write a letter and say, Sunseem, is this Korean culture or is this heaven's culture? I would be like, Sunseem, we have a couple of questions we want to ask. And you give the examples and you say, oh, in our culture, it's like this, this, and this. So we don't normally do this, right? We're wondering if it's okay for our churches to do it this way and it's more comfortable for Americans or Australians or Europeans to do it in this way. And I think that would be a much wiser way to actually do it. I really think that's something that we could do in a far more wiser way, right? And I hope that's something that we can really, that we're going to really be able to understand also, is that it's not going to always be done in, like everything we get from Korea is not heaven's culture. And if you ask Sunsim a question, generally you will get a general answer, right? Sunsim, what's the difference between Korean culture and province culture? And then Sunsim will give you a general answer like, well, you can't really take out Korean culture from province culture because, like think about Sunsim. He is Korean. He does it in a Korean way, right? Like you can't take that out. But that's just a general answer to a general question. There's nothing specific about it. There's nothing in there that should make anyone say, see, I told you, everything must be done in this way. That answer is too general because the question was too general. I would say Sunsim, if anyone, it is Sunsim who is the most understanding of culture. Like even in Europe, think about this. In Europe, it's so different from Korean culture. Korean culture, you give space to each other, you bow, you don't touch. In European culture, many places will kiss each other on the cheek twice. Now, imagine if that's a guy and a girl, they greet and they kiss each other on the cheek twice. Now, in Korea, that would be crazy. You know what I mean? Imagine, that would be nuts. Right? That would really, really be nuts to see it in that way, right? And I would say is like, oh, that's very interesting. Like it just couldn't happen in Korea, but when Sunsim's in Europe, he understands. He's like, no, you can't change people's culture. You can't. That's the way they do it. There's nothing harmful about it, right? He understands because it's the culture of that country. He doesn't shun it. He doesn't look at it as satanic. He doesn't look at it as fallen. That's just the way it is, right? Sunsim understands it really well. And this is why I do believe we too have to be wise about how we write, right? So we all need to know that this is something that we have to be wise about, but we can't just be frustrated like, man, is this Korean or heaven's culture? And one thing we do have to take into consideration is what Sunsim said in the past is, Sunsim is Korean. You can't take away the Korean out of him, right? Which means that there are some things that are overlapping. Some things. It doesn't mean every single thing, right? And it's something that we have to recognize and realize it's much different than what we actually think, right? So what we need to do is, and I would say this is for all things, number one is don't just go to Sunsim and ask him a question about, hey, Sunsim, what about this? No, get into it, research it, look into it, see the difference. What's it about? Understand it really well so that when you report it, you're coming as someone who really, really understands it. You know what I mean? And I think that's something that we should be really thinking about also. So, that is something I do think is a great question. Is like, what do you think about this? Should we do it this way? And the answer is, there are some things that are absolutes and there are some things that aren't. And that's why even for me, remember I was talking about a couple weeks ago, was it last week? I'm like, I would love to do a sermon in a Western way when you have a small pulpit, you walk around and stuff, right? But that's just coming from my own thoughts. I don't even know if it's an absolute to have that pulpit there, or if Sunsim is okay with doing, like, that's something I would absolutely ask. I'm not even saying that we should do it. That's something I think we should ask about and explain the culture in the Western countries to say that, hey, this is kind of what happens like this. This is what people respond to a lot better kind of thing, right? Because even for me, like I talked about last week about sermon delivery too, there's a huge, like even for me, when someone in Korea complains about sermon delivery, the points of why they complain are much different than the points of why people in the foreign countries complain. They're different. They really are. Like, I would say that the speed of foreign countries when they speak is faster. For sure, it's faster. It's still slower in a sermon, but not as slow as Korea. If we did the speed of our sermons, the speed of how Korean speakers do it, people would be so frustrated at that point if it's that slow. And if we were to articulate every single word like it's supposed to be in Korea, we would be so frustrated by it. Like right now, if you're from a Western country, I speak pretty fast. I'm going to say I articulate pretty well. My enunciation is pretty good. However, when I speak kind of fast, it's not like anyone in the Western country is going to be like, "Oh my gosh, Pastor Scott, it's way too fast. I can't understand a thing you're saying." No. It's actually, I bet you for Western countries, like the speed of it, if it's a little bit faster, people will understand it even more. And it's something that we do need to understand and experience much better. And I think it's very interesting when we start to see things, we have to understand from the perspective of our country, our culture, all these other different things. And sometimes we're going to get like educations that are going to be very different. And I would say the wisest thing to do is to, at least in the beginning, you got to follow it to the T. And then as time goes on, what do? Then we're able to, sit down and really be able to understand why things happen and be able to explain it really well too, so that Sunset can know for the future also that there is a difference, right? So, there's a lot of things to think about, and there's a lot of topics that we can go deeply into also. Well, I really need this coffee, and this is really good coffee too. Either way, so okay. So there's one question I want to ask you guys, okay? And I'm going to ask you guys if you guys have experienced this. So I'm meeting a member in Korea from a foreign country, and it's interesting because they talked about headquarters dropping the ball in a certain area. You know what I mean? And it's so interesting because while this person is talking to me, I'm restraining myself. Meaning, the moment I heard someone say like something somewhat negative or like, "Oh, they really dropped the ball here," my heart went into defensive mode. And I was having conversation with myself like, why am I thinking like this? Like, why am I getting so defensive? Like, my feelings. I don't know if you guys have ever had this. Like, even for me, I've only been in headquarters for 3.5 weeks. And here's someone saying something about the group that I'm in, that I'm a part of, then my heart tightens up, and then I go into some type of defensive mode. Now, of course, they didn't show it in my face, but I could feel it in my heart, and I thought it was so weird. I was like, why am I feeling this? And how can I disarm my thoughts so that I can do the most important thing, which is to listen? So it was like I'm listening to the conversation, listening to this person, I was spending so much energy inside my head to disarm my heart so that I can listen properly. Because I know that sometimes people have a reason why they say negative things. They had an experience, some type of trauma. And remember I told you guys this on Monday, that even for me, because of 2 of the IMD directors in the past, I had trauma and I had a negative view of IMD. That was just what I was going through. Right? And because I know that about myself, I'm in a new position, and I'm not here to defend anyone. I'm here to listen. I'm here to reflect. I'm here to do better. I'm here to help, kind of thing, right? And it was such an odd experience for me that I'm here for such a short time, but I have these types of feelings. right? I don't know. You guys ever have that defensive feel? You know what? I guess everyone's kind of had that. Like if someone says bad things about your family or your church or your department or your country or something along that line. Yeah, like I'm sure that everyone's had that. Like even if you fight with your brother or sister and you kind of hate them at the moment, but you make sure that no one else touches them. Like you're like, what the hell did you say about my brother kind of thing, right? Like even my brother who's not in Providence anymore, he'll defend me. He will defend me, even to his girlfriend. Like he broke up with his girlfriend because of me. My girlfriend was saying terrible things about she was like speaking things she didn't know of. My brother wasn't happy and he broke up with her. Yeah. My brother was so shocked. I think some of you heard this story that, I'm pretty famous in Vancouver amongst the Korean Christian community. They know that I'm in Providence, stuff like that too. And what happened was, I went to go visit my brother. My brother's sorry guys, that was a slip. My brother's girlfriend was visiting a friend who lives in the same apartment. And then he says to his girlfriend, "Hey, come down and meet my brother." And she refused to meet me. Tell me that crazy. I'm like, my brother's kind of like, huh? And she refused to meet me because I have a high role in a cult, right? And I thought to myself actually, that's a pretty cool rumor that I'm high up in Providence kind of thing. I was like, ooh, that's kind of cool, right? But she started saying things to my brother like she heard that I drink blood. That's, tell me how crazy those rumors are. I drink blood. My brother started laughing because, my brother was in Providence. He knows what Providence is like. He knows what the things that are wrong or things that need to be fixed or whatever it is. But he also knows what it's not. So when she said that, my brother, I drink blood, my brother started laughing until he saw her face was serious. And he was like, what? And he straight up defended me. And then when she couldn't understand it, he broke up with her. I think my brother gets righteousness points for that. He does. He gets righteousness points for that, for sure. Right? So I think I kind of get it. Like if someone says something about your family, you got to defend your family, right? You got to defend your family kind of thing. You got to defend your church. You got to defend your city, your country. Yes, we acknowledge that there are things that are wrong with our families. There are things wrong with our churches. There are things wrong, come on. No one's delusional. There's going to be problems in headquarters. There can be problems in IMD. We have problems everywhere, right? We can never say that there's a perfect entity out there. We can acknowledge our faults, but we also defend that, hey, even though we're not perfect, we're doing a good job or we're trying our best or we're doing something along that line where we don't allow people to just wantonly come in and say negative things, right? But I found it very interesting, just me, in the middle of a conversation, talking to myself in my head like, stop thinking this way. Why are you thinking this? Why are you like this? Don't be like that kind of thing, right? And that was interesting to me because it's one of the first times that I was able to kind of see myself and fix myself in real time. Isn't it like a lot of times we make the mistake, then we look back and say, oh my gosh, I was wrong. But this is kind of interesting because I was in real time talking to myself like, shut up, Sky. Stop thinking this way, you moron, you stupid head, you poo-poo face kind of thing, right? I'm like, come on, Sky, stop being a poo-poo head, right? I'm like, gotta listen. There's gonna be something I'm gonna learn from this. And I thought it was kind of cool to be able to do things in real time. I don't know. That's something that I thought was kind of cool. This happened just yesterday too, so I was very, very thankful about this too. Before we get into the first music break of the day, we got our first poll. First poll of the day, very cool. It is this kind of inspired by Daniel's segment on Friday of what's the first thing you do when you need help? Like when you're in distress and you need help, what's the first thing that you do? So we got a couple of options, which is number 1 is to talk to someone. Number 2 is wait for the word. 3 is to pray. 4 is to stress out. And 5 is what other different ways you do, right? It could be some people run away, some people hide, some people start to read, some people go make some coffee. I don't know what it is. There are certain things things that we do. And yeah, that's the poll for this week. I hope you guys will enjoy it. Just put it down. I'd love to know what you guys would do in that type of situation. Okay? So before we get into the Evangelism Scripts word study, let's get into the first music break of the day. All right, so let's get into our second segment for today. And every Wednesday we do have the Evangelism Scripts word study. And, it's very interesting because I have done a ton of different scripts for you guys. I have done some education for a church already on evangelism. And I've had some really thoughtful and insightful conversations on evangelism. And this is couple of things that I've noticed talking to different leaders from around the world. And the first thing that I realized is the condition and situation of most churches are pretty similar, right? People, it seems like in general, of course, not everyone, in general, people are kind of stuck, really focused on their own lives, right? Thinking about what they need to do, their finances, and history becomes very secondary than their own life itself. And I think it's kind of what happens when we go through massive tribulations, right? I would say pandemic, massive tribulation, right? And then we have 2023, massive spiritual tribulation. And what happens usually is sometimes we just don't like facing the difficulties because we see that we already have so many difficulties of our own. We just do. And we begin to focus on our own. Like, regardless of whether we go through difficulties in Providence or not, we're going to have our own life difficulties. But when we put God first, there's that joy and excitement that comes up from this week's message, right? And even though we're suffering, we're okay with it because it's meaningful. And I'll give you the best example is me doing my mission right now. I am totally not as free as I was before. I'm not free, right? I can't do whatever I want. However, because what I'm doing is so meaningful, it doesn't really feel like oh my gosh, I have no freedom in my life. I don't feel that way, right? And what happens is, guess what? If things become really, really difficult, we begin to focus on the difficulties of our own life. And when we start to think about the difficulties of our own life, then we begin to fall asleep on the faith aspect, right? People can begin to fall asleep in that area. So think about this. Let me give you an example. In the past, when we were really loving Providence and God was our number one priority, we were living the life and everything else was secondary. There was no problems to come to church for prayer. There was no problems to come to church for service. Even if it was far away, we went. But what happens is when people get caught up in quote unquote life, then even the things that were so simple in the past that we never thought twice about become very difficult, like going to church, going to pray, going to service, right? And we feel like, oh man, I got to get ready, I got to do this. Oh, it's going to take so much time. And there's a difference between when we begin to take our eyes off God and begin to focus on our own life. Another example would be volunteering of time. In the past, we would gladly, volunteer, put our time in and effort for different events that happen in church or even just to go to participate. But when difficulties come, people will choose to volunteer less or be more stingy with their time. And this is where it gets very interesting because, all of our actions come from our thoughts or our hearts, right? And the one thing that Sanjeev said is this about our hearts. Sanjeev said, if your heart is wide, like you have a wide open heart, then it's like having a rich heart, or it means that you easily give, right? So the rich person easily gives, right? Because they have a lot. However, if your heart is poor, meaning your heart is small and narrow, then you become more stingy. You calculate more. And I think that's something that we're all able to kind of really look at ourselves too. Look at our hearts. See what we were like in the past and what we're like right now. Are we more willing? Are we the same? Or are we less willing to do things now? Because if you think about the size of our hearts, if we have a rich or a poor heart, it plays such a huge role in how the church actually grows and moves, right? So how the church grows is in other words, how people grow individually inside the church. And if the churches are in a position where our hearts are narrow and our hearts are small and narrow, if our hearts are poor, we have nothing to give to people. And that's what's going to happen to us is we're going to become so stingy where, oh, it's too far. Oh, it takes too long to take care of. Oh, the kids take too much. No, then the gas takes this. Oh, I don't have this. And we begin to calculate and become way more stingy where in the past we never thought about it and things still worked out. It still worked out, right? So if we are in this type of position, I was talking to someone from headquarters of another country, and they were like going, how can we bring people's hearts back together? And always one of the first things that leadership needs to do, and this is something that I need to do as as IMD too, which I'm not going to do yet because I still don't know what I'm still getting used to the mission itself, learning as I go right now, and then we create a vision. But a vision is something that captures people's hearts with something that gives them energy. It gives them a future, which is it gives them hope. Hope is about the future. It's about something they truly want. And this is something that we need to develop for ourselves, and this is something that we need to develop for this entire history. So let me give you an example. If someone says, like, a vision is not something it's not as small as someone just saying, I just want to preach. I think it's too small. Wanting to preach with all my heart is too small. It's not really a vision. That's just something you do. It's not a vision. Because a vision is something, it leads to something. It has to be bigger. It has to be something that is almost unattainable. You know what I mean? The vision has to be bigger than just preaching itself. So let me give you an example. If you just want to preach and then you say, oh, my vision is I want to preach to 100,000 people. Guess what? It's not a vision. It's too small. Why? Because you can have like a YouTube channel. It blows up once and you'll speak to 100,000 people. It's not that easy. A vision is something bigger. A vision is something that you look to and say, wow, that's something that's incredible. Like, if I were to think about something to be, why should you become a great preacher? Or why do you want to preach right now? Is some people will say like, oh, well, if I keep preaching and I learn how to preach really well, then what I can do is I can teach the next generation, right? But even that's not big enough, like just to teach the next generation, because how big do you want it? Like you can say that to have a vision is to start a lineage of preachers, unwavered by storms and winds and waves, that will be sent out to the ends of the earth, that through this lineage, you will have one of these preachers in every single country in the world. You know what I mean? Like that is something you're like, whoa, that's crazy. That's the type of preachers we need. This is the special forces of preachers that will be used by the heavens, right? And that would be something where you'd be like, okay, that's why I'm preaching. And you'd be like, okay, that's crazy. Like crazy as in amazing, right? Or someone can have a vision of, I want to start preaching. I want to preach with all my heart so that I can start a school for preachers that raises generations and generations of preachers, right? That will become the head leaders of the future or something along that line. And it starts with me preaching well first. So that's why I'm going to start preaching with all my heart. Do you know what I mean? Like the vision is so far beyond that. It's got to be something so hopeful and grand and big. You're like, whoa, that's crazy. Like that's amazing. Like I've given this example to you guys before. One of the worst visions people can have when it has to do with money and when it has to do with buying something. That's not a vision. That's totally not a vision. Oh, I want a house with like 10 rooms and 14 bathrooms and a basketball court in the back. And that's not a vision. That's just a want. What's the vision? The vision is the why do you need it? The vision is I want a house with 10 bedrooms. Why? Because I truly, truly believe in family. And for my 7 brothers and 2 sisters, which is 10, and then my parents, which is like 10 of us, I have a room for all of them. I'll have a bathroom for all of them. It's going to be a huge house so that once a year we can always come together and have this family time. Why? Because that's how important family is to me, right? Which means that the vision is beyond what you buy, beyond I want 100,000, I want 1 million. No. It's got to be the why behind it. Why do you want 1 million? Why do you want this? Why do you want that? Like there's a vision where someone can say, we need 1 million people in Providence. And then someone says, why? And you say, because once we hit 1 million, we will not, the slanderers mean nothing to us. They can't come after us. That would be like, yes, then Sunsi would never have to go through this again. It almost makes me think to myself why Sunsi was pushing so hard for 100,000 people in Korea like 10 years ago. I almost feel like he saw what was coming and he knew that if we hit that goal, we wouldn't go through what we're going through right now. Right? So it's something I do think that we have to think about is the vision, like even say for not just for yourself, what about your country? A vision for a country in Providence is interesting, right? Like say if we look at America, because I'm from American Providence. I was evangelized and raised in American Providence. And when I was growing up, Sunstein was saying that America is the new Rome, right? So what happened in the time of Jesus? Rome was the place where the gospel hits Rome, it goes to the ends of the earth. It spreads to everywhere because everyone comes to Rome. But Sunstein in the past said America was the new Rome. That's a huge vision, to be the Rome of the complete Testament time period. And then later, Sunstein said it was China, right? That China was the new Rome. But even for me, I look at it right now. And if I were to give a vision to one country, I would say Taiwan. I think Taiwan can have a great vision because even though Taiwan is small, there is a powerful Chinese country, right? It's a Chinese country, right? Chinese speaking. And the one thing that you see is every country in the world has a Chinatown. Every country in the world that if you hit the Chinese people, it spreads to every country in the world because Chinese people are everywhere. You're not going to have Americans everywhere. Americans are not living everywhere. Americans are basically in America, right? Everyone comes to America. But Chinese are everywhere. And I can kind of see like the new Rome of the complete Testament. I'm not saying this is true. I'm just saying that I can see it. Is like Taiwan. Taiwan they have plenty of vision to see for the future. They really, really do. Now, after you create a vision for your church or for your country, this is where you start making targets to hit, right? For instance, imagine AP, like American Providence comes up with a vision. The next step is, what are the targets we need to hit? And one of the things that I would look at is American Providence started in 1986, right? Which means that in 2026, American Providence will be 40 years old, which means it's a significant number to be 40 years in this history, which is motivating. It's a motivating force. What can we give to the heavens when we hit our 40-year anniversary for Providence in America? And that becomes a driving, like a motivating force. Taiwan too. Taiwan, I think you guys had Providence come in there in 1988, which means that in 4 years, you have the 40-year anniversary of Taiwan. What is going to be the thing that you're going to give to the heavens for your 40th anniversary? And these are all things that are very powerful tools that help us, right? So I really hope that that we can really have that type of vision, that type of understanding, that type of heart that we got to kind of grasp it again and put our eyes and focus it on God first before anything else. Because we know absolutely, Matthew 6:33, seek first the kingdom and his righteousness, then all these things will be added unto you, right? Everything is given when we do that first. And I hope it's something that we will realize and recognize at a much, much higher level also, okay? So that is something that I definitely want to bring up to you guys. And it's something that I look at and say, yeah, this is something that we really have to recognize and understand. And it's something that we have to push ourselves towards to understand the condition, situation, circumstance, all these things, because it does matter, right? So, we got to start it somehow, but we need to start it with people who really, 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 with a church, with a group of individuals that are putting God first. It doesn't mean that you throw away your children and your families. No. It's meaning having the heart, the priority to put God first. It doesn't mean to neglect your family. It doesn't mean to neglect your job. But God is the first thing that comes up in our mind. And that's what has to happen first, right? And when we have God as a priority, there are going to be sacrifices that are made. Not because you're like, oh, I want to suffer. No, it's because you want to do it. You truly do. All right. So that's kind of what I want to talk about for today's evangelism scripts. Talking about evangelism, how we're going to get things started once again, and how it starts with the basics, understanding the condition we're in, but also understanding there needs to be a vision that we all need to reach towards. And when you have that vision, you got to start having those targets that lead us towards that vision. Okay? So there it is, guys. That is today's Evangelism Scripts word study. I hope it's something that you guys really enjoyed. If you have any questions, just go ahead and ask me. I'll definitely be able to help you with that. Okay? So there it is. Hope you guys have any questions, comments, leave it in the comments below. All right? Which means, before we get into Health is Happiness, we'll get into the final music break of the day.
I was a lost one. I found the right one. I found the right one. Yeah, we're looking for the lost ones. I was a lost one. I found the right one. I found the right one. We stay looking for someone to hold when the right one's standing at your door. Open up your heart and say, I believe in what you say, and I promise you will gain much more. Yeah, we're looking for the lost ones. I was a lost one. I found the right one. I found the right one. Yeah, we're looking for the lost ones. I was a lost one. I found the right one. I found the right one. 10 years of struggle, 10 years of pain, but I'll finally get to see you no more. Just calling your name, and the ones who wonder who, just open up your eyes. He's waiting for you too. He's not a man in disguise. And the hardest cross to bear, but your heart's not what I wear. To think this effort and this love could overcome the dirty stairs. And it's all because of you. Yeah, it's all because of you. Said it's all because of you. Yeah, I need you. Looking for someone to hold when the right one's standing at your door. Open up your heart and say, I believe in what you say, and I promise you will gain much more. Yeah, we're looking for the lost ones. I was a lost one. I found the right one. I found the right one. Yeah, we're looking for the lost ones. I was a lost one. I found the right one. I found the right one.
Okay, so let's get into today's final segment for this Wednesday podcast. Hope you guys have been enjoying it thus far. Today, we're going to start a new segment, a new series. So the last 3 series were about health tips for people in their 20s. And now we're going to get into health tips for people in their 40s. And yes, that includes me. So I hope you guys will enjoy this, whether it's for yourself or helping those out around you that are in their 40s too. So without further ado, this is this is Dr. Zinni over there in Canada with Health is Happiness.
Hi everyone, it's Dr. Zinni here, and welcome to another episode of Health is Happiness. So guess what episode we're on? The Big 4-0, which is super suitable to today's topic. Today we're going to discuss health tips in your 40s. When you're in your 40s, you might notice some changes in your bodies. Your joints may feel more stiff, and you may notice you're more prone to symptoms of joint and muscle pain. It's harder to lose that weight, and you seem to store more fat around your midsection. Your skin, well, there are some major changes. So today we're going to chat in detail about your skin, the metabolic changes affecting weight and muscle mass, and other age-related changes as we head into the 4th decade of our lives. I mentioned that as we age, our joints and muscles will feel more stiff and achy. This is partly due to hormonal changes that cause both loss of bone density and also loss of structural proteins in our connective tissues as we age. We talked about collagen in our skin. Collagen is not just the main structural protein in our skin, but it's also found in our muscles, bones, cartilage, tendons, and ligaments too. As we age, our bodies don't make as much collagen, and our existing collagen starts to break down. As we lose this collagen, our ligaments become less stretchy, and our bones, cartilage, and tendons weaken, and they can become more stiff with use. Collagen drops more in those with lack of sleep and lack of exercise. So because there isn't enough evidence for me to endorse the use of ingested collagens, we recommend good sleep, exercise with components of stretching and resistance, and staying away from sun, smoking, and alcohol to help with this issue. Okay, now let's talk about your skin. In your 30s, sun exposure to UVA may have already caused more wrinkles, photoaging, and hyperpigmentation. Your collagen, that structural protein that keeps our skin elastic and makes us look young, starts to take a nosedive. UVA damages the fibers in the skin called elastin, so we get less bouncy and saggy skin. By 40, you've already lost 10 to 20% of your collagen, which, along with the loss of the subcutaneous fat, is what causes your face to literally droop. You lose some of that sweet fat around the cheeks and along the jawline, making your face appear more angular and tired. It looks like the skin is falling, but our faces are also deflating due to bone resorption causing loss of structure. Your 40s is when you really start to see major changes in the firmness of your skin. You're dealing with loss of volume and elasticity, as well as more pronounced wrinkles and sun damage. You may start to get the appearance of a double chin because of that saggy skin and loss of structure, even though you may not be overweight. You may want to invest in a high-quality serum and moisturizer that contain peptides, which are the building blocks of collagen and elastin. It's important to note that collagen is too large of a protein to be absorbed from the skin surface. So that's why many topical creams contain amino acids instead. In particular, glycine, arginine, and proline are important amino acids for building collagen, but intake of vitamin C is also important to stimulate collagen production in the skin. Ingested collagens just get broken down into their amino acid components that get distributed in the body to wherever our bodies need protein. At this age, you may need to incorporate a slightly different cleanser that has more hydrating power. You might choose a mild lotion-like cleanser that is less abrasive on the skin and strips away less oil to accommodate your skin's need for hydration. For ultimate moisture retention, you might also incorporate hyaluronic acid into your routine, which can be used both day and night, as well as a rich night cream that contains glycerin, ceramides, or fatty lipids to help encourage skin barrier repair. Finally, other than developing a good skin routine, you'd want to get that good beauty sleep consistently. Okay. The 40s is when hypertension and high cholesterol problems start to manifest. So it's good to purchase a blood pressure monitor and check your resting blood pressure now and then to ensure it is not hovering around or above 140/90, which is the cutoff of hypertension. You should also see a doctor to get blood work done to check your sugar and cholesterol levels. If anything is trending high, then you should work with your doctor to fix these areas ahead of time. We talked about how heart disease, stroke, and diabetes are still top causes of death in the world. Your risk of developing cardiovascular disease in your 40s is directly related to how you lived in your 20s and 30s. If you followed an unhealthy lifestyle during these years, you're more likely to develop high cholesterol or hypertension. You're more likely to be at risk for cardiovascular disease once you hit the big 4-0. So everything we discussed up until now to keep you healthy in your 20s is not too late to start in your 40s. According to a study conducted by the American Heart Association, cardiovascular disease risk factors that were present in the 40s age group were highly predictive of what kind of health one had at ages 65, 75, and 85. Okay. let's talk about health complications related to changes in metabolism. Researchers have found that hormonal changes caused by declining testosterone and estrogen levels contribute to changes in body composition, fat accumulation, and fat distribution. You'll start to accumulate more fat, especially around your waistline. Your resting metabolic rate, or what we call basal metabolism, does naturally slow with age, and lower estrogen and testosterone levels contribute to a sluggish metabolism. But thanks to new research published in August 2021, unfortunately, we can no longer blame our unwanted weight gain on a slowed metabolic rate. According to this new research published in Science, metabolism reaches its peak much earlier in life and slows down much later than we previously thought. People may think that their teens and 20s is the age where their calorie burning potential is at its peak. But the study shows that, pound for pound, infants had the highest metabolic rates of all. This was an international study of 29 countries that measured total energy expenditure in different age groups. What they found was energy needs shoot up during the first 12 months of life. By their first birthdays, babies burn calories 50% faster for their body size compared to adults. And that's not just because infants are busy tripling their birth weight in their first year. The babies grow rapidly, which accounts for much of the effect. However, even after you control for this, their energy expenditures tend to be higher than what you would expect for their body size. More research is necessary to understand what drives the higher energy expenditures in infants. But after the initial surge in infancy, apparently a person's metabolism slows down by about 3% each year until we reach our 20s. After that, it stays pretty level. Our body's metabolic rates are actually fairly stable from 20s until 60s. So, these results strongly suggest we may no longer be able to blame weight gain in the middle age on slowed metabolism, at least between ages 20 to 60. Okay, what else happens when you're in your 40s? Your body starts becoming insulin resistant. As you get older, and especially as you gain weight, the body starts to ignore insulin. This is the hormone responsible for regulating blood sugar levels. Insulin enhances glucose uptake and metabolism in the cells, thereby reducing blood sugar level. As a result, your blood sugar is higher because your cells aren't absorbing it. The result, it feels like you're hungry and you may experience more cravings. Not only can this lead to unwanted pounds, it also puts you at greater risk for type 2 diabetes. To avoid a glucose overload, it's important to include a mix of carbohydrates, protein, and healthy fats at every meal. The protein and the healthy fat help the body feel more satisfied for a longer period of time, and so you don't crave those super starchy carbs that can give you a sugar crash. Pay attention to where your carbs come from too. If you drink juice, obviously, it increases your blood sugar circulating in your body quickly. If you eat whole grains, on the other hand, it has more fiber and breaks down more slowly, and so it gradually releases sugar into the bloodstream. Sticking to a Mediterranean-style diet in your 40s has been shown to be protective against cancer and heart disease, and it doesn't cause huge swings in blood glucose levels. What else happens when we age? Your appetite hormones change. These hormones, including ghrelin, which tells you when you're hungry, and leptin, which tells you when you're full, change. As we age, the receptors for these hormones don't work as well as they used to, and we become resistant to them too. And it's not just in your head, you're actually feeling hungry because of your hormones. One tip is to keep a food diary. This can help you pinpoint pitfalls in your eating habits and help you get a better handle on your hunger cues. When you actually write down what you eat, you can see if you're actually snacking all day or what times of the day you eat, or if you're eating bigger portions than you need. A food diary can also tell you if you're eating enough protein. I recommend 20 to 30 grams of protein at each meal, since your body can absorb only so much protein in one sitting. speaking of protein, this is also something that happens as you age. You lose muscle mass. So we're out of time today. Next time, we'll continue to talk about loss of muscle mass in your 40s and other age-related changes in your body. Join us next Wednesday on Health is Happiness.
And that's a big thank you to Dr. Zinni over there in Canada. Hope you guys really enjoyed the health tips for people in their 40s. I believe part 2 will be coming next week. All right. So there it is, guys. That is today's Wednesday's podcast. Hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I have. Enjoy your Wednesday service. Enjoy your day. And we'll see you guys again tomorrow on the Morning Star Drive on 117.8.
It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop me when I'm like this. I got my head in the zone, you know